The ABC has just been attacked by Ukraine's ambassador in the most undiplomatic language I've ever heard from a diplomat. Last night, the ABC ran a documentary by a British filmmaker who was allowed by the Russians to film their side of the front line in their invasion of Ukraine and report what their soldiers thought. Here's the trailer of the film shown last night on Four Corners.
We are not monsters, we are humans, and we defend our motherland.
Unprecedented access.
The sounds here are so much more terrifying than Donetsk.
The other side of the Ukrainian war.
Do they feel the West don't understand them? Finished?
We should run now, we should go because...
Oh my gosh.
How old are you?
19.
You lost friends?
Yeah.
Well, Ukraine's ambassador was today beside himself with rage and tweeted, "The program aired last night on Four Corners, Ukraine's War, the Other Side, was the journalistic equivalent of a bowl of vomit. It unquestioningly repeated and aired countless blatant lies, historical distortions, racist claims and propaganda narratives emanating from the Kremlin. It completely served the interests of Russia's dictator, Putin. It also minimised and denigrated the deaths of thousands of innocent Ukrainian men, women and children killed by Russian soldiers in an illegal and brutal invasion. The Australian Broadcasting Corporation should be ashamed that it put such total garbage to air." The ABC this afternoon defended the documentary as challenging but legitimate, said it added to our understanding, showed the full horror and impact of war, but it agreed to meet the ambassador to try to talk it all out. Joining me is my Tuesday panel, Will Kingston, host of Australiana, weekly podcast from The Spectator on politics and culture, and Danica De Giorgio, host of our new chat show, The Jury, every Sunday here on Sky at 8 p.m. and prime time on Fridays at 7 p.m. Now, Will, here's another short excerpt from this documentary. A Russian soldier saying what he would do to the Ukrainians, who he calls fascists and blasphemers.
За свои кощунства, за весь свой беспредел фашистский, который они делают. Карать будем жестко.
Should the ABC have run this, Will? Should have run a documentary that didn't even challenge soldiers who denied the massacre on camera, the massacre and torture of Ukrainian civilians in Bucha?
Yes, of course they should have. I'm in the slightly uncomfortable position of sticking up for the ABC here. There is this instinct often amongst the media class, Andrew, that suggests that people are stupid, that if you put a piece of content in front of them, they're going to be mindlessly brainwashed like sheep. Same thing happens with Trump. You'll see stations like MSNBC come up and say, well, we're not going to promote what he says. It's dangerous language. And this is rubbish. People are not stupid. In this instance, they know Russia's an autocracy. They know war involves propaganda. They know that this is going to be biased, but we need to be able to put dangerous ideas out there because it encourages people to think critically about them. It encourages them to go to other sources, to read other things. But by just saying to the media, you need to push one particular narrative, that is the dangerous thing that we need to stand up against. Good on the ABC for putting dangerous ideas out there.
Danica, these are dangerous. That is the whole point. I admire Will's defence of free speech. I think he's got a point. On the other hand, Will doesn't see the kind of people that tweet to me about how wonderful Putin is and how wonderful Russia is and how terrible Ukraine is. They do fall for stupid things. What's your view? Should the ABC have run this?
Well, I actually disagree with Will, and I disagree here because this was not independent journalism. My issue is not going to Ukraine, going to make a film or a documentary about the war. That's not the problem here. But the problem that I have is that this filmmaker was embedded with the Russian army. Therefore, the Russian army were looking after this individual throughout the entire filming process. But the fact is we had Russian soldiers come out and say, no, war crimes didn't actually happen. Nothing to see here. It was all a blatant lie. And there was no pushback. But we know, though, that the UN has investigated war crimes and it found that Russia has indeed engaged in war crimes against Ukraine. There was no pushback. And I think in documentaries and I think in anything, you have to be able to show both sides accurately of the story. And I don't know how the ABC, Andrew, can come out and say that, quote, it was an important contribution to the reporting of war. Sure. But if you're not going to push back on the Putin propaganda and spew that rubbish all over the internet, all over television, then that becomes a serious issue, given the ABC actually has a charter to be fair and balanced. And that's what the problem is here.
Yeah, two responses there,
I think Will's
Andrew.
right. Both sides have to be... Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Will.
No, two responses. The first is journalists have been embedded with armies since well before World War One. That's not anything which is new. The second thing here is that the statutory obligation to show both sides comes up when they've been showing the Ukrainian side for well over 2 years. This is a different alternative view of this war, and it's indeed called the other side for a reason. But it doesn't mean that every single show needs to have a 50-50 balance of two sides of the story.
No,
I think you're
agree.
getting both sides from the journalism that's been shown over a longer course of time.
But you can't have the propaganda side, Will. This is what makes it dangerous. And I understand, as a journalist myself, I understand that people are embedded with the army. But you're playing with danger when you're embedded with the Russian army, where you know that they're going to spew the propaganda, and you can't take those lies on face value and then put it in a documentary. You need to be able to show both sides of the argument and push back, because that's responsible journalism.
The thing here, Will, is of course that the filmmaker admitted that he was too scared to challenge someone who was telling him the massacres and torture and rapes in Bucha didn't actually occur. It's well documented they did. He walked away, and I think if you're filming in fear like that, you have to be very, very honest with the viewers and keep saying what you didn't dare show, what you didn't dare challenge, because otherwise you are falling into the hands of people who are not Mr. and Mrs. Reasonable, just another side of an argument.
Yeah, I take the point, but at the same time, I think that most people are smart enough to see the context around which that person was filming. And I think on balance, it is better that we do get that information out in the open than not have it at all.